Houston, this is Jupiter 2, apogee in T-30. We will have orbit momentarily. Commencing retroburn. Captain Olivier spoke from his capsule. Solid copy, Jupiter 2 on course at speed. You may commence retroburn at will. Coordinates locked. Came the reply from the radio. Captain Olivier looked carefully at his control console and double, triple and quadruple checked his calculations as the shuttle's slow rumbling and shaking started to lessen. The plexiglass in his view began to demist slowly as the atmosphere began to thin rapidly. Space. The beautiful void began to open itself up to the crew as the shuttle charged through the atmosphere. 70 kilometers. 80. 90. We are out of Atmo. Speed at Mach 26, heat shield stable. Fuel nominal. Andreas, the pilot, said as he carefully manipulated the flight controls. Houston, target in sight. Distance 2-2-3K and holding. Hold for visuals. Captain Olivier said as he began calculating an intercept point. Copy that, Jupiter 2, press is waiting. Ready to make history. Hell yeah, Houston. Let's just hope the techies were right about it. And all of those guns are inactive. Andreas said, gripping the flight controls a bit tighter. If techs weren't 100% about it, you wouldn't be here, Jupiter 2. There's no need to hope. Can I hope anyway? 200 clicks out. Andreas joked, making note of the distance. We're out of Atmo, commencing orbital retroburn. 11 GS of force? Are you ready for this, Kim? Olivier said, looking back at his female tech lead sitting behind him. What I was trained for, sir. She smiled at him, ever the eager beaver. He smiled back as he double, triple, and then quadruple checked his calculations again, making absolutely sure he had it right. Kim double-checked hers and Andreas made sure his controls were as responsive as they needed to be. Retroburn in 3, 2, 1, fire. The button was pushed, the engines lit up, and within the space of 20 minutes, 30% of their fuel was gone, and close to 100,000 kilometers of distance was closed. Andreas shouted in excitement as he achieved speeds his old carrier jet could only dream of. Kim closed her eyes and concentrated on kittens and numbers to lessen the impact of the massive acceleration forces being applied to her body. Olivier simply smiled, keeping still and focusing on an imaginary horizon. Target is closing fast, starting rear burn at 20%. ETA, 50 minutes. Olivier said as the radio crackled back to life. Copy that. Metrics are at 108K clicks to target. Tech says burn hard for 184 seconds, then 180 to approach. Should get you there nice and gentle. Houston responded. Andreas used his RCS thrusters to turn the craft around, facing exactly the direction they came from. All 3 crew members had a moment to look at home, the beautiful blue marble sitting peacefully behind them. God, I wish you could see this, Houston. She looks gorgeous, Kim said with elation. Retroburn in 3, 2, 1, fire. The button is pressed. The engines roar to life and the cabin shudders with 8 GS of force as the shuttle decelerates. The entire operation is conducted over a period of an hour, as the craft slows to a crawl at 100 meters per second as they approach their target. The shuddering stops as they shut their engines down, engaging close RCS thrusters to control their approach. They are barely 50 kilometers from their target now, and its massive size is becoming increasingly concerning. Okay, Houston. The moment of truth, starting the stream now. You gotta see this thing. It's, bigger than expected. Andreas spoke with a tinge of fear in his tone. Hey, that's my line, Kim said, breaking the tension with a that's what she said joke, receiving a gale of laughter from the radio and the cockpit. The stream started, and all over the world, nearly 4 billion people managed to see with perfect clarity the massive behemoth starship that had been visiting them for over 2 centuries. Just under 2 miles long, just under half a mile wide, and nearly a quarter mile in height. Calculations put the weight displacement at just over 250 million tons. And as the tech crews figured, its massive array of weapons was inactive. For the first time in history since its appearance over 200 years ago, all of mankind had a perfect view of it in crystal clear 1080p. The hull painted a dull military gray, the the trim on its edges painted a stark silver, with its weapons and detailing such as antennae and guns in a beautiful gold. Dotted along the hull surface are the image of presumably the faction logo, colored purple, mixed in with purple streaks and lines to give the ships a more defined look. It appeared on New Year's Eve 1820 for the first time, suddenly appearing in our skies and creating a global mass panic. It then performed the same ritual every 5 years for the next 2 centuries. It would warp into that exact same spot at the exact same time every year, 9 a.m. Washington time, New Year's Eve. It would sit there for 7 days, then warp out again. It was always the same ship. But every time it would be seen, it would be slightly larger or have a new array of weaponry, or be slightly more refined in its design. At first it sparked panic. The few telescopes on Earth that could see it made a bigger deal about its weapon arrays, sparking a new industrial revolution due to the apparent need for self-defense from an evidently superior foe. It never responded to communications, provocations, or even attacks. It would warp in, sit there, then warp out. As technology progressed, and the warmongers were quietened, a new drive overtook humanity. Weapons development continued, but this time as a means of self-defense. More and more interest developed, using the few photographs and detailed imagery to attempt to reverse engineer or re-engineer visible components of the craft. This led to a second industrial revolution which led to the information age. By the time it had passed its 100th anniversary, a new space race began where humanity desired to look to the stars, now fully aware it was more than possible as evidenced by the city-sized warship wandering around near their homeworld. And now here we are. On the 200th anniversary, an expeditionary crew is sent to get into it and see what exactly it is or who it belongs to, or even if it's friendly. The world was both excited and tense. If it opened fire, all nations on Earth would immediately take action to try to vaporize it with an ever-expanding arsenal of anti-ship nukes. If it was friendly, every nation was itching to get their hands on the tech. Kim was from Brazil. Andreas was from Britain. Olivier from the US. The crew that built the shuttle and launch was a joint operation with almost every nation that could spare either the resources or engineers. Everyone had a stake in the game here, and everyone was both excited and nervous. Okay. Starting sweep. We are 5 clicks out. No activity from weapons systems. No signs of hostility. Doing sweep. Olivier said, plotting the course on his computer 3 times to be sure. Using its RCS thrusters, the shuttle began to fly around the massive ship, using a huge array of dozens of cameras to record every single micrometer of the ship's hull. A huge amount of information was being thrown at Earth, and dozens of teams across the planet's surface were frantically receiving, copying, archiving, and decoding it. Olivier painstakingly did this task for over 2 hours, giving the crew more data than they could possibly hope for in one sweep. A close-up shot of the bridge, a close shot of the intricate logo, a perfect camera picture of the side-mounted hangar doors, and a very careful but beautiful photo of the front-mounted cannon array. Military analysts and weapons engineers now have enough work to leave them sleepless for decades. Artists now have sufficient inspiration to keep them busy for centuries. Structural engineers are already at their tables designing better housing blueprints based on the ship's hull. Aeronautics enthusiasts are already imagining themselves in the cockpits of starfighters. High-definition shots of the armor plating are staggeringly beautiful, revealing each and every single armor plate covering the hull had a different pattern etched into it. Other plates had strange, bewildering scorch marks or dents from combat or meteorites that formed intricate patterns. Rarely, a few armor plates dotted here and there had pieces of artillery shell or intact railgun slugs embedded into them. And suddenly, the whole world stopped. On a sweep of the starboard side, though scorched and damaged, very clearly written in the English alphabet made out of silver lettering. It was confined to a single armor plate just in front of the bridge, so it wasn't exactly easy to see. The lettering was a bit scorched, but a name could be made out. As Reclusi Arches, Revenge. This photograph made the entire planet suddenly collapse in a collective gasp. Closer looks around the ship's exterior yielded 3 more of these nameplates. One read, Property of the USSMC. The second read, Manufactured in Juneau Drive Yards, Bay 47, Operations Template 17. The third and final plate was a memorial plaque with a steel tombstone on it. It was mounted directly behind the bridge. The words on it sent shockwaves even greater than those felt by the ship's mere existence at this point. To the memory of the fall of New Eden, 2 billion lives lost. Our vengeance was absolute. This opened up a massive can of worms and fights began to break out. This wasn't alien, it was a human-made warship. Speculation skyrocketed and fights began to break out. The shuttle started its way to the ship's port side, and as they settled in to try to take some photos of the hangar bay, it opened. Houston, Houston, portside hangar bay is opening up. Andreas yelled up. Keep away from it, Jupiter 2. We don't know what that thing can do. Too late. Olivier spoke up and comms shut off as a docking arm appeared from the hangar bay doors, grabbing the shuttle and dragging it inside. The shuttle rocked and shuddered, everyone terrified of their situation as the world was rocked with despair. Comms shut off and the shuttle was dragged into the hangar bay. The hangar bay was very well lit. The interior paint job a bright white. Yellow and black hazard stripes marked parking bays for drones, the hangar capable of holding 2 large commercial aircraft. Dozens of what appeared to be atmospheric or spaceborne fighter craft lined the hangar bay, ready for deployment. The hangar door closed and the shuttle was slowly lowered to the floor. The noise in the cockpit slowly leveled out, the soft huma of the shuttle interior gradually being replaced by the mechanical grind of the larger ship's internal operations. What the actual fuck, Cap? I didn't sign up for this, Andreas said as he struggled with the controls. There wasn't anything he could do. The shuttle's RC system had flamed out and refused to start. We're dead in the void, sir. We're locked out of our systems. Every command I give is being blocked. I think this ship has just hacked our entire system, Kim said as she tried desperately to counter the attack on her system. She frustratingly slammed her hands down on her keypad. Damn it! I'm completely locked out. The shuttle's doors released and opened. The seatbelts came loose and a clear holographic path opened up leading to a door in the ship's hangar. A voice, a clearly English voice, spoke up from the ship's AI. Pressurization is complete. Please proceed to debriefing. The crew were bewildered, befuddled. The voice repeated again, with emphasis. Please proceed to debriefing. Follow the marked path, please. Following the order they were asked, with no other real choice, the crew left their seats and followed the marked path. The air was fully breathable, so there was no need for much else. Olivier grabbed his weapon, a small .45 caliber sidearm, and kept it close. The trio made their way through the ship, entering a long tunnel. Entering pilot core. Please hold for debriefing. The voice spoke as they entered a large room, dominated by a pod-like object in its center. What in God's name is this place? Kim said as she tried to use her wearable computer to catalog it. The trio approached the large egg-shaped pod in the middle of the room and wondered what to do. A series of mechanical clangs and grinding gears started, filling the room with a low rumbling noise. The pod moved up. Its casing opened up and revealed a shocking sight. A human, male, very heavily augmented with pipes and cables coming from every point in his body. His face covered with an ornate, handcrafted mask. Every time he breathed or spoke, a jumble of bubbles appeared. The human in the pod regarded each member of the crew with a glance. Took you long enough to get up here. We were expecting a lot more. Who are you? Andreas asked. It's been 200 years since I have needed to care. My call sign is Recusiarch. Therefore that's my name. What the fuck is going on? Olivier asked, keeping his sidearm at the ready. There is no need to be rude. Reclusiarch glared at Olivier. A history lesson perhaps. The lights dimmed. A holographic display appeared around the trio of adventurers. You say it's the year 2020. It's not. It's the year 2320. 2029. A breakthrough in commercial spaceflight led to a mass exodus of Earth. Mars, Callisto, Jupiter, Hell, even Pluto became colonies. Then people like me showed up. Corsairs. The hologram showed the images of various points in history. Had everything they knew been wrong? Was everything they did for nothing? A Corsair is a human that has undergone a complete biocybernetic replacement of all components. A device known as a synaptic link is installed and the pilot is engaged into a ship. The devices and tech allowed us to directly control a ship of any size as easily as we would control our own bodies. Thoughts become actions. Actions translate into ships the size of cities. Volunteers began to appear from every part of every colony we had. The hologram changed to show the events unfolding, giving a good idea as to the sacrifices necessary to undergo the process. But the results spoke for themselves, allowing for a single individual to control a warship the size of Manhattan. Corsairs took off in every direction. By the end of the century, tens of thousands of us were out in the void, accomplishing who knows what, doing whatever they want. The governments of the world, greedy as always, decided to do what politicians always do. They tried to control us. The Seoul Civil War started. The hologram showed short snippets of half-hearted political speeches and mindless ramblings about too much freedom with too little accountability. Various images of riots erupting in colonies, Corsair pilots being illegally arrested, followed by a Corsair fleet suddenly appearing, wiping out a federal blockade fleet with no losses. The government declared war. The Corsairs hijacked the shipyards and fleet assets that gave them their lives, and vanished from the system. 6 months after the Exodus, we had first contact with aliens, an empire that simply immediately attacked us. New Eden was shattered, 2 billion lives erased. We attempted negotiations. They responded with violence. We surrendered. They massacred or enslaved us. They found Earth, and although the Federals put up a valiant defense, they were no match. The aliens were ready to shatter Earth before the Corsairs warped in and engaged. The hologram showed a short movie of all the events described. Planet being shattered in half. Warships of human design being melted into slag by powerful laser weapons. The alien fleet arriving at Seoul, dismantling a fleet of warships that engaged, destroying shipyards and factories on all colonies, killing billions. Finally, the alien fleet arrived in orbit of Earth, only to have the flagship suddenly vaporized. Our revenge was merciless, absolute. The Corsairs, limited only by imagination, returned home with a thunderous roar of revenge, rage and hatred. Unchallenged by regulations or rules, they vastly outmatched the aliens. They chased them out, wiped their fleet out completely, then began a devastating rampage. Blinded by rage, they cut a devastating swathe of death and destruction through the galaxy, scouring it clean of life. By the time they returned from their crusade, the damage done to Mother Earth was sufficient to render us back to the medieval age. The hologram showed a montage of merciless destruction as dozens of fleets were vaporized by overwhelming force. Hundreds of planets were scarred clean of life or simply shattered out of rage. 60 years of history passed by as the hologram showed Corsairs scouring the galaxy clean of all sentient life. The hologram showed Corsairs returning in mass numbers near Earth's orbit, only to be greeted with a species that they took too long to save, a world regressing back to the age of muskets and castle walls. Blinded by rage, we forgot where we came from. Now we all wait in silent vigil above the remains of the tombs we created, hoping that those we left behind will forgive us for what we did. We do not regret our attacks against the enemy. We regret not coming home to help. The hologram stopped and the lights got bright again. The room remained quiet for a good 10 minutes while people took in the information they just heard. 300 years of human history was lost. All the time it was up here. So, what now? Andreas asked, still dumbfounded. A small mechanical arm appeared out of the floor holding a device of some kind. Take this hard drive. Go home. Think, deliberate, consider. We will be waiting for you to reclaim your place in the void.